Guys, for anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Pastor Jared. I am the next gen pastor here, which is a fun way of saying basically from birth to 18 is where I have my forte. But then I also get parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles, so all of you are mine. Because as we're raising up the next generation, everybody is involved. It's not just a Sunday school volunteer and a kid. It's everyone. It's families. It's extended families. It's adopted aunts and uncles and grandparents. As a church, we raise up a generation that can change the world for God. So, now that you know who I am and what I do around here, since I'm not the normal speaker, I have decided with my position that there is a generation gap, right? Between the oldest in a room and the youngest in a room. It's very clear to me. Nowhere is it more clear than in the concept of dating, and specifically the end of the dating process when it comes to a marriage proposal. So should said thing happen, right? My great-grandfather, who was a World War II vet, told me once about how he met my great-grandmother and how they began dating and things like that. So he was a very young man when World War II first started. He enlisted immediately and began training to be a bomber pilot for the Air Force, right? While he was doing that, he met a wonderful little nurse. They started dating on base. And right before he was about to ship out, she looked him dead in the eyes and said, "You either break up with me or marry me, because I'm not doing this whole wait until you get home thing." So they got married. That was it. It was quick, it was simple, it was to the point. They went, right? My grandfather, his son, met my grandmother when they were in 7th grade. She was a librarian. He was a punk. He used to go into the library, move the books around, move the Dewey Decimal System around so people couldn't find anything, mostly her. They got married right out of high school. Simple, easy. They spent the time, it was there, it was done, right? My mother and father had a spot that they went to for almost all of their dates, right? It was a place in San Diego, just off of Coronado Island on the rocks. Mom said growing up, like, this was their spot, right? In fact, I have been there multiple times. My spouse has even been there with my mother because that's an important place to them. They would pick up fast food and just go sit and watch the boats or the seals jumping into the water. One day, he comes to her at that spot and says, "Let's get married." And she said yes. Then comes the millennial generation. Nothing is simple, nothing is easy. I blame the bachelor and bachelorette for this one. Because I grow up with the idea that if I don't make this spectacular show of love at the moment that I'm going to ask my wife, she just might as well say no, try again next time. Right? So, here's what I do. My wife and I have been dating for quite a while. We were in college, and we were long distance, so it took a little bit longer for us to get to that point. But at the end of our junior years, we're actually out here visiting my family who had recently moved out, right? And again, we'd been dating a couple of years. The idea of getting married had been talked about, right? We'd even gone and looked at like what kind of rings she was interested in, so she knew it was coming, okay? And then we're out here, and I say, "Hey, Chelsea, we're going to do a date night on this night, right? Just you and me, we're going to go do something special. So make sure you pack a really nice dress, right? Because I got us a really nice reservation." Now, immediately, I know when I say that to her in this situation, she's going, "Oh, this is it. Like, we're away from university now. We're somewhere special. He's talking special date. He's got the family there. This is it," right? So the day finally comes, and I come out wearing as close to a suit as Jared likes to wear, which means I put on a button-up shirt that wasn't quite tucked in, a tie, a jacket, and jeans, right? But it's pretty good for me. Come on. We're lucky I'm not wearing a hat. She comes out looking spectacularly amazing in a dress. And we go to a beautiful sit-down dinner, right? And the whole time, she is staring at me like, "Is it here? Is it going to be happening here?" Right? The first couple times that like she hugged me when she first saw me, I could tell you for a fact, she was like side hugging almost to pat down my breast pockets to feel if there was a ring hidden in there, right? Of course, she didn't feel anything. So we go to dinner, and she's still looking at me, right? And I put the jacket on the seat next to me while we're eating, and she just keeps looking at it, looking at me, looking at me. Dinner goes fine, goes great. We pay, and I say, hey, I want to go for a walk, right? And so south, way down by the in Queen Creek, out by the mountains down there, I'm like, there's this beautiful gazebo that sits at the base of the mountain, that when you're standing at the gazebo, you got the mountain here, and the sunset's going to be setting over the edge of the valley over there. It's going to be gorgeous. And I see her eyes go, there it is. There's that special spot. And we get there, and we're standing there, and we're watching the sunset, and it's beautiful. And I'm expressing my love to her, and she's expressing her love to me, and we're talking about it. And I'm like, hey, so there's a path that goes just down here to the lake. I want you to go down there, stand and look at the lake. I have a present for you. I'll be there in a second. I have a very special gift for you. And again, if there were bells and whistles going off in her head, I could have heard them. Like, her excitement level has gotten this high at this point. And I see her like doing this number as she's going down there, right? Like, she's just brimming with anticipation. And we get down there, and I hand her a book. And I say, I was thinking about you as I bought this. And she takes the book from me, and she looks me dead in the face, trying so hard not to be disappointed and to just smack me. And she goes, thank you. Like, and keep in mind, this wasn't just like a fun, like a romance novel or something. Like, it was a theological textbook. Right? It was something that she was going to use for school and later for work. And she's like, oh. And she just slowly starts to turn away from me and like face the water like I'm going to kill him. And I'm like, and I put something nice in on the front cover. And so she opens the front cover, and I put one of those little labels, that says like, this book belongs to. And it says, this book belongs to Mr. and Mrs. Bowman. And she reads it, and I hear the book hit the floor, and she turns around, and then I'm on a knee, with the ring in hand, right? And I didn't even get to ask, because she just tackles me screaming yes, right? Which in my head then tells me like, man, we could have just done like McDonald's or, no. But I went like above and beyond, and my whole theme for this, right? And I've had friends who've done other things, like they go up on skyscraper rooftops to propose, or they go camping out in the mountain. Like, they do these extravagant things to make this moment so memorable, right? And my twist on the memorable was I was going to play a little sleight of hand with her all night long. I was going to just dangle these things over here saying, come on, look over here. This is where it is. This is where it is. Oh, aren't you disappointed there's nothing there? Right? This is exactly where we find Job, by the way. So we've been studying Job for the last 5 weeks or so. And we're finding him now. We're going to dig into chapter 31 today. And we are going to find Job in a place where this is happening to him. He is taking the place of my wife in his life, right? Where the whole story is going over here, over here, over here, over here, over here, over here. And he's missing what's happening down here, because this is where the real thing's going on. So, before we start reading, would you all pray with me real quick? Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you so much for this amazing morning that we can come to you, that we can engage in your word, that we can hear your story in the midst of everything going on in our lives. Lord, it's unique that we get to come as a family and sit here, that we get to share in stories, that we get to laugh and invite your teachings into our lives, and not just make them something we heard, but make them something that affects us deeply. Lord, I pray that you open our hearts, open our minds today in such a way that we see what's going on beyond what's right in front of our face. Looking beyond the illusion, looking beyond the trick, to see what you're doing behind the picture. In your amazing, awesome, and wonderful name, we pray. Amen. So, where we pick up with Job in chapter 31, he is essentially in court, right? The elders of his community looking at his life and the way that things have gone, because let's be honest, things have not gone well, right? His life is a mess at this point. Pain and tragedy and sorrow on a scale that, like, let's be honest, that drive any one of us insane, are the kinds of things he's been experiencing. And so the elders of the community are calling him into court, and he has friends that begin to accuse him of things, right? And so the previous chapters have been his friends standing up there going, well, you had to have done this, you had to have done that, right? Or maybe you messed up over here, or have you secretly been doing this, right? They're doing this because in the ancient world, the way people believed was that gods, and God in particular, had emotions. And not just emotions, but they had our level of emotions, right? Things literally would break their hearts. They would make them so mad that they would throw temper tantrums, right? There's tales in Greek mythology of Zeus being so angry that he destroyed cities and mountains. And so when things went wrong in people's lives, they just assumed God was angry. God's mad. We need to fix it. We need to find out who did what, and we need to make sure the punishment is hard enough that it ends. Here's the thing, guys, that's not how God works. Right? That is not who God is. God is not angry. God is not mad. God is not sitting in heaven going, oh, you said that to them? Ooh, lightning bolt. That's really not what's going on here. And I think Job has this understanding to a certain extent. The problem is Job in chapter 31 is going to fall victim to their mythology and buy into it. So they're accusing him for chapters upon chapters upon chapters of all of these horrible things, saying that he did this and that, and now he gets to do essentially what every divorce or defense attorney in the world does, and he gets to give a closing argument. And he is going to defend himself to the court. All right? So let's begin. Job, chapter 31, we're going to start with verses 1 through 8. I have made a sacred pledge with my eyes. How then could I stare at a young woman with desire? And what share has God set aside for us from above? What is the heritage we can expect from the lofty God, the highest one? Has it not been made clear these many years? Is there not supposed to be punishment poured out on the wicked and disaster on those wrongdoers? Does God not see the paths of my choosing? Does he not count every single step I take? If I have walked alongside lies, or if my feet have rushed towards deception, then let God weigh me on a truly balanced set of scales. He will know and see my integrity. If my steps have veered off God's prescribed path, or if my heart has followed any of the evil my eyes have seen, or if my hands are soiled, then let me sow. But then let another one eat the produce. Let my sprouts be pulled up by their roots. So his opening statements here, he's basically saying, look at my life, y'all. I've been doing well. If I was doing horrible things, would I have had all of the good things in my life? Would God have blessed me if I was doing? See, he's buying into this whole idea that good things only happen to good people and bad things only happen to bad people. Right? He's starting already to buy into the whole, look over here, look over here, look over here. But at the same time, he's making an argument there that, look at my record. Have any of you ever actually seen me do anything? Have any of you ever actually seen any evidence of wrongdoing? Right? He's starting to get a little passionate. Let's keep going. Job 31, 9 through 15. If my heart has been seduced by another woman, or if I have waited by a friend's door for a liaison with his wife, then let my wife be taken by another to grind his grain or do whatever he pleases. And let other men kneel down over her, because adultery is such a lewd, scandalous act, an offense punishable by the court. For it is a fire that burns until the destruction is complete. Had I done it, I would have undone all that I had gained. if I had refused justice to my servants, either male or female, when they have cause for dispute with me, then what ought I to do? God stands to judge me. How will I answer when he calls me to account for my actions? Did not God, who made me in my mother's womb, make the servants as well? Is he not the same one who made us each in our own mother's womb? Two more issues that he's tackling, right? So he's been attacked by his friends, saying, maybe you were doing a secret adultery with one of your neighbor's wives. Maybe you beat your slaves and your servants. Maybe you treated them wrongly. And he's saying, no. I've never, right? He explains exactly what he thinks of adultery here. I mean, he's not holding back words, right? It's not pretty to read even, right? And then he talks about the people working for him, the people underneath him, and he says, if any of them have ever had a cause for dispute, have I ever treated them wrongly? No, because he sees them as what they are. He sees them as people that God created. Right, now he's really ramping up this argument. He's going to keep pushing with everything he's got here. Right? Now he's going to dive in even further. Chapter 31, verses 16 to 23. If I have stood between the poor and the object of their desire, if I have caused a widow to lose her love of life, if I have eaten my food alone and not shared it with a hungry orphan, indeed, from as far back as I can remember, I have cared for them all. From my youth, been a father to the orphan. From my own birth, cared for the widow. If I have idly watched anyone die from exposure, simply due to the lack of clothing, or seen the poor without any kind of covering, if ever people in such conditions did not physically bless and thank me for warming them up with the fleece of my own sheep, if I ever used my civic strength to condemn the fatherless simply because I knew I had allies in the courts, then let my arm be pulled from its socket. That's extreme. Let my forearm be snapped off at the elbow for raising it against the orphan. See, I have always dreaded the kind of disaster wrought by God. I was never able to withstand his majesty. Now he's doubling down. Now he's not just saying, have you ever seen evidence of me doing this? He's literally throwing himself into the fire saying, if I've ever done this, then feel free to torture me. Feel free to destroy my body physically. If I've ever done any of those things. If I haven't cared for people, right? And keep in mind, none of that is technically law for them. Right? He's going above and beyond. He's now saying, not only did I keep the 10 commandments and not break them, I've gone above and beyond and furthered God's mission. I have gone out of my way, given my own time and money since I was a kid to help people who are in need. Right? I can imagine in the back of his mind, standing there in front of his friends who have been condemning him, he's sitting there going, how dare you? You can't tell me that at least one of the people in the room hadn't eaten at his table. He's got to be so furious with them. Even then, at the end of that section, he's still buying into the idea that everything's happening over here. Good things happen to good people, bad things happen to bad people. Look over here, look over here. Let's keep going. Verses 24 to 32. If I have put my confidence in my stash of gold, if I have trusted in a metal so well refined, if I have exulted in my immense wealth, for I have accumulated so much. If I saw the sun in its radiant glory, or the moon sliding across the sky in its splendor, if such sights secretly seduced my heart and made my hand throw kisses to the false gods of sun and moon, then these things too would have been punishable offenses, because they would have shown me untrue to the God above. Have I gloated at my enemy's downfall, or been excited when he encountered evil? No, I have not permitted my mouth to sin by uttering a curse against his very life. Have my guests ever left my dwelling saying, anyone still hungry? Who didn't get enough to eat? Have I ever left the foreigner to sleep outside? No, my door was always open to the traveler. Right? So now he's clean and clear of the morality of it. He's gone above and beyond just keeping the commandments, and he's argued that he's bought into the mission of God and gone above and beyond and cared for people. Now he's doubling down again and saying, and it's not about my stuff. I don't care about the money. I don't care about any of that. It's not about treasure. It's not about gold. I've lived for God. And not only that, I look at the beauty of the world and I make sure God gets the glory for it, not the God of the sun and moon. I'm not worshiping Ra. But again, are you guys seeing what he's doing? Yeah, he's making an argument against them and everything that they said he did. The problem is he's arguing an entirely false argument, as if only good things happen to good people, as if only bad things happen to bad people. Let's finish up here. 33 to 40. If I have covered my sins as people do, or attempt to hide my wrongdoing in the recesses of my heart because of my fear of the opinions of the crowd or my fright at the disdain of my family, and kept silent, hiding indoors away from all possible discovery of flaws, if only someone were listening. Now here to these oaths, these curses, I make my signature. Let the highest one answer me. Let my adversary put his case in writing. If he does, I would place it on my shoulder for all to see. I would put it on my head and wear it like a crown. I would offer him an account of the steps I've taken along my life's path and approach him directly like a prince. If my land cries out against me, if my furrows gather together to weep over my mistreatment of them, if I have eaten the fruit of the land without payment to those who tended it or exasperated the lives of its tenants, the farmers in pursuit of great harvest, or in poor management of them, then let thistles grow instead of wheat, and stinkweed instead of barley. This concludes the words of Job. Chapter 31 is his argument that he is good, that he is a great person. Here's the thing, though. That was never really in question for us, right? Pull yourself out of the narrative for a second. Go back to the very first few verses of the book of Job, and we find out Job is blameless, right? Now, the Hebrew word that they use for blameless is tam, and tam literally is the word used for perfection, the ideal man who is in relationship with God. The book opens by telling us that this is who Job was. That Job didn't break the rules. That Job went above and beyond. That everything his friends would eventually say about him was false. We knew this from the beginning. So why include it? Why does Job need to say it? Why these powerful words? Because don't get me wrong, everything he said is good, right? I mean, that is the kind of life we should be living. We should be caring for those who are less fortunate. We should be going out of our way. We shouldn't make it materialistic. We shouldn't be about ourselves at all points. We should be about God. So when I was in college, I took a class about theology. In one of the classes, we were discussing the book of Job, right? And the professor asked, what is the point of Job? Why did this book get written? And we talked, and in the course of our discussion, a multitude of answers came out, right? I remember one of the students said, the point is to make us all super uncomfortable, which it succeeds at. And I remember the professor going, okay, but what else? And somebody said, it's to make us question everything that we think. And he goes, okay. And someone's supposed to say, to make us wonder what the character of God really is. And we keep going around the room with all these things, and we're skirting this idea. And the professor stands up and says, what if the point of Job is to make us do two things? One, maybe it's to make us decide once and for all which side of the fence we want to be on. Because we're supposed to look at the character of Job and say, dude was perfect. That's not me. And even he went through crap. So what am I supposed to do with my life? Two, it's to tear down the idea that God's angry. This is something that's common, believe it or not, throughout the Old Testament, is this continual destruction of the idea that God is angry at us. Because everybody else is God's word. That was something that made God unique, was that he wasn't just waiting for us to step on the wrong bug to smite us, right? As the great line from the movie said, "Smite me, O mighty smiter." That's not what he's about. So why is Job going through all of this? If God's not punishing him for something he did wrong, which is what everybody else in the village believes, and he just proved is wrong, why is he suffering? Why do any of us suffer? Why does it hurt? Right? We just came through one of the most terrific years that I can imagine in human history. Raise your hand if you had a great time last year. Right? Okay, thank you. Every single one of us went through pain. And it varies. There are people who suffered last year. Why? If it's not about us hurting God in some way and him hurting us back, then why did it happen? Why will it continue to happen? Why will we feel pain? C.S. Lewis gave us a beautiful little insight in a book that he wrote called The Problem of Pain. Right? Read this with me. Our Father refreshes us on the journey with some pleasant inns, but will not encourage us to mistake them for home. Every single one of us begins a journey the moment we take our first breath. The destination of that journey, we all hope, is a life connected to God and living in his presence forever. Along the way, we're going to have a couple of good times. We're going to have a couple of good times. Notice the line doesn't say, there's going to be some trouble. No, it goes the opposite. It's everything's trouble. There's going to be a couple of good moments, guys. The difference is none of this part of the journey should be home. The beginning of Job. Job is perfect. Literally, the Hebrew word for perfection. Which is why the enemy wanted to attack him. That's why the enemy engaged in what he did and why the enemy did what he did to Job. Because the enemy understands the concept of sleight of hand. The easiest way to take Job's eyes off of God is to make it hurt. Look over here. Look over here. Every moment that I didn't give my wife a ring on that date was a little bit of pain. Anxiety pain. She's waiting for it. Everything that happens to Job is the enemy going a little bit further with the, look over here. God's over here. I don't want you looking over there. Look over here. Where are our eyes? Where are we focusing? I'm not saying pain isn't something to pay attention to, because you have to. Pain affects us all deeply. But I think what Job, specifically this chapter, is designed to teach us is that if we focus so heavy on the pain that we lose sight of everything else, we've missed the point. Right? I remember growing up, I stubbed my toe or something, and I remember my dad coming up behind me, and he'd be like, "What's wrong with your toe?" "It hurts." And he'd flick my ear, and I went, "Ow!" And he goes, "See, but you stopped paying attention to the toe." I'm not saying we do something that silly. But in the midst of pain, we need to find a way to turn it back to God. We need to find a way to not make the pain the point. Right? Because we're on a journey. And when you talk about the journey, you talk about getting from point A to point B. You don't necessarily say that the journey is this rough spot or is that rough spot. The journey is bigger. There's something going on beyond the moments. It's more than just this hurt. Anybody who's ever experienced true suffering will know it's not a one and done. You're going to suffer again. Because that's part of this journey. Right? And as we continue on in Job, there's going to be further lessons into this. Because at this point, we've crossed the threshold. Right? We have crossed the threshold where Job has finally removed his view from God. All the way up till this, people are accusing him of things, telling him, turn away, turn away, turn away. And he's going, no, God's got me. I need to focus on God. Now he's standing in a courtroom and his friends are accusing him. And by God, he's going to defend himself because I didn't do anything wrong. And he ends it with, and if I have done something wrong, then let God himself show up and tell me that. By the way, it's a very bad idea to say things like that, as we're going to find out. Stay tuned. The lesson here is very simple. The enemy of God will do anything it can to pull our attention off of God. On this journey, it's going to pull us off into the weeds. It's going to get so thick that, as the old adage said, we can't see the forest from the trees. What God is going to ask us to do is find a way to get through the pain to the next in, using the pain as motivation to be more. To keep our eyes on God. Don't get tricked. Don't get lost in the weeds. Don't begin to question, what did I do to deserve this? Because that's not how our God works. And it's not about you. If you turn back to God, there will be comfort. Maybe not exactly how we want it, maybe not in the way or in the time that we want it, but God is not abandoning anybody anytime soon. So, church, as you go from this place, as you experience life beyond these four walls, I pray you journey. And I pray you keep your eyes focused on what is most important. I pray that God is where your eyes are fixed, that you don't fall victim to the distraction, the sleight of hand, and miss it all coming. There is bigger picture every single day. And it will give you comfort knowing what the bigger picture is if you can find a way to gain perspective. I hope you pray. I hope you gain in wisdom and in strength every single day by journeying further. And I pray that the ends come more often than not. In his amazing, awesome, and wonderful name, we all pray. Amen.